Before any problem can be solved, the people involved have to be convinced the problem is serious enough to need attention. I believe that's the situation with acid rain right now. We all know it's bad, but most of us don't see it as a national crisis yet. Anyway, it's a big problem, and we're small, and what can we do? If it was bad for human health, we might start getting a little more serious about it. But it's not, we don't think. In our hearts, we all know what the problem is, and we know how to solve it. But the solution is unpopular, so we go along with the verbal diarrhea out of Washington and Ottawa about more studies being needed. Meanwhile, the lakes die, and we're just as responsible as the evil industrialists or the jelly-spined politicians for that. But an attitude change may be on the way. During the winter of 1983-84, the Federal Health and Welfare Department did a study comparing school kids from southern Ontario with an equal number from southern Manitoba. They checked out 700 kids from Tillsonburg, Ontario, and discovered more breathing problems and 2% less lung capacity than the students from Portage-la Prairie. The parents of the Tillsonburg kids also reported more allergies, coughs, stuffy noses, and even hospitalizations for breathing problems. The main difference between the air in the two towns is that Tillsonburg air has more sulfur dioxide, other sulfates, and nitrates than the Portage-la Prairie air. It's these kinds of chemicals that make acid rain. Doesn't sound too mysterious, does it? The chemicals that make acid rain appear to make school kids sick, too. I wonder what it does to unborn babies and other more fragile forms of life. But William Richardson says acid rain doesn't hurt people. He's the past president of the American Waterworks Association. Speaking at the 38th Annual Waterworks Association Conference in Halifax, Richardson said studies have shown acid rain is not a hazard to people's health, but a hazard to water systems. Well, who knows, maybe he's right. But the National Health and Welfare people are going to study a bunch more kids, 5,000 of them in Ontario and Saskatchewan this time, to see if maybe they're right instead. Meantime, there are a few other interesting tidbits of information emerging. The Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources has begun to find a lot of cadmium in moose kidneys. Other scientists have found livers from Ontario moose unsafe to eat, again because of cadmium. Now that in itself is intriguing, but won't require most of us to change our diets much. The reason the cadmium is there is kind of scary, though. It seems that acid rain leaches cadmium and other heavy metals out of the soil and rocks and carries it into the groundwater. That lets it get into the lakes and rivers, and there it gets into plants. The moose eat the plants, and so it goes. Of course, moose aren't the only creatures that eat plants. The whole aquatic hierarchy, starting with teeny bugs and going to large fish, starts with single-celled plants. Wild birds and animals eat fish, and so do we. With heavy metals being leached into the water system, who knows what will happen down the road. Luckily, there may be a way to cut down a lot on acid rain without it hurting too much. Jim Bruce, an Assistant Deputy Minister at Environment Canada, says keeping close watch on the weather will help. Bruce says sulfur and nitrogen oxides, the real bad guys in the acid rain gang, build up mostly on warm, still days. The most serious acid rain could be reduced a fair bit if smelters and thermal power plants switch to some other form of fuel, like oil or low-sulfur coal, during those hot, muggy days. Apparently, the weather folks can predict hot, calm weather up to 4 days in advance, so the companies have time to switch to safer fuels. It seems to me we talk about the weather a lot anyway. Maybe we could start helping watch for the kind of weather that encourages acid rain and remind the industries it's time to change fuels. It might even help us change our attitudes a bit about dealing with acid rain, too. I'm Noel McNaughton.